I will call the February 2nd meeting of the Verona Plan Commission to order, and we will begin with the roll call, please.
Commissioner Manley,
Here.
Alderperson Linder,
Here.
Commissioner Getz,
Here.
Mayor Hokumer,
Here.
Commissioner Horsfall,
Here.
Commissioner Lytle,
Here.
and Commissioner Heinzen is absent and excused tonight.
We have a quorum. We will proceed with the meeting. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes from the January 5th meeting of the Plan Commission. Those minutes were included with your packet. What's your pleasure? We have a motion by Mr. Horsfall to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lytle. Were there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the previous meeting? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. I would like to, I think, before the meeting, those of you that had not met Mike Getz prior to this evening have met, so we want to welcome Mike to the Plan Commission meeting. I know you were not feeling well last month, but you're here this evening, and you're going to do just a great job on the Plan Commission. I know you will. So.
Well, thanks for the early confidence.
All right. Thank you for your service. Next, we have a lengthy agenda tonight. We have a number of public hearings, so we're going to move through the agenda. First, we have a public hearing on a conditional use permit amendment to the Epic Systems Corporation Group Development to allow for the construction of Campus 5, which will contain 5 office buildings located at 1979 Milky Way. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing? We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Manley. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are in the public hearing stage. Mr. Sayre, if you would provide the background, please.
This is a request from Epic to construct their Campus 5. Epic's overall campus is part of what's called a group development. Group developments are when multiple buildings are located on a single parcel. So Epic's original campus was part of this group development, and we're here tonight Epic's requesting to amend it with their proposed Campus 5 construction. This is a recommendation tonight to the Common Council.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. With that, we are in the public hearing stage. If there's anyone that wishes to speak on this agenda item, we would ask that you would come to the podium. There should be a sign-up sheet there if you would sign your name and address. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Anyone that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Anyone that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, I would accept the motion to close the public hearing. We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Manley. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and the public hearing on this agenda item is closed. We have 2 items under this agenda item on number 4. If we were to take action on 4A, it would be a recommendation to the Common Council, and 4B would be action taken by the Plan Commission. So with that, we are now on agenda item 4A. Mr. Sayre, anything in addition that you wish to comment on? Thank you.
As the mayor indicated, Epic is here tonight requesting an amendment to their group development and also requesting site plan approval to construct Campus 5. Campus 5 would be located immediately east and slightly north of their Campus 2 and also southeast of their Campus 4, which is currently under construction. This campus would have 5 buildings, would contain approximately 1,600 offices and also 500,000 square feet. The dashed line, the site plan here, is the parking structure that was previously approved by the city last year. Similar to the rest of the campus, the lot lines in this parcel, they're kind of scattered about. We've talked about this in the before, but I just wanted to mention this again, that some of the buildings will be straddling lot lines similar to the other campuses. Once again, the reason for this is that we have an existing TIF district in this area, and if we were to kind of combine all lots at once, it would create some administrative issues from the TIF standpoint. It'd be difficult for us to administer it. Epic is aware of this. We've talked in the past about this. Epic has said they'd be more than happy to clean this up at any time, but the city has actually requested they hold off on this. So once again, with this campus, as with, like I said, the other campuses, there will be some lot line straddling, which we'll probably deal with after that TIF closes in the near future. Access to the site would be from Northern Lights and also from a future Hubble Drive that will be located north of here. Staff has no concerns with this. The access to the parking structure would be by free flow ramps, similar to the farm campus on Campus 3. Parking, as I previously said, Campus 5 would be constructed on top of the previously approved parking structure. From a building design standpoint, similar to the other campuses, Epic is using high quality materials, brick, stone, some slate roofs, pretty similar to what you saw during the initial review at the last month again. So no major changes there. Once again, high quality materials. Staff has no concerns with the architectural designs of the campus. It's consistent with the other buildings in the area, and like I said, we have no concerns. So that being said, staff recommends the Plan Commission recommend to the Common Council approve an amendment to Epic's Group Development Conditional Use Permit to allow for the construction of Campus 5. And second, we recommend that the Plan Commission approve the site plan for Campus 5 to be located at 1979 Milky Way. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. And the applicant is here tonight as well. He'd be happy to answer any questions as well too.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. With that, we are on agenda item 4A. Questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. Manley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question about the, well, I guess I have two questions about the overall plan itself. The first one being, has the applicant indicated the phasing of the buildings? Would they correspond, like build building number 1 first, building number 2 second, et cetera, or would they all be constructed at the same time?
Mr. Richard, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Bruce Richards from Epic. The phasing is, we'll start with 2 buildings, then several months later we'll start additional buildings. All 5 buildings will go within a year
Okay.
of start of construction.
And how long do you anticipate the construction for all of the buildings together?
We're probably out about a year and a half.
Okay. And a small amount of blasting work
Yes, there will
required?
be a small amount of blasting work. It's really associated more with the parking deck than it is the buildings themselves. The buildings themselves will be situated on land that's already pretty much cleaned off, ready for the buildings.
Okay. And then one follow-up
Go ahead,
question, if
Mr.
I could.
Manley.
I know you had held a meeting with folks in the neighborhood, and the materials for that meeting had indicated that the berm that lies between these buildings and I guess the neighborhood and Northern Lights Road, you're pretty much only going to be seeing rooftops above that.
Yeah,
that
very,
berm?
very small amount of rooftops, and then once the foliage and trees that we put on the berm begin to grow, you'll see very little of the buildings.
Okay. Thank you. By the way, I think the buildings look very nice.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. Linder?
Thank you, Mayor. I got a couple questions. One for you, maybe first, Adam. Could you outline where the fire department exactly go? I know how they would respond. I know they go on Little Brown Road on the one here, but how would they get there? Because some of they're like one of the ones in the packet doesn't show how it connects to Northern Lights. So I don't know if you can show it on a map.
Mr. Sayre?
So if there was a fire, how would a fire truck
How would a
actually?
fire truck get there? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe there's an access off the screen here is kind of where the future intersection of Cross Country and Northern Lights will be. Hubble Drive will kind of loop north, but there will be an access point as you kind of come down to connect from there. You also have an access potentially from here in the gray area as well too that could hook in there as well too. I know the fire department and Epic meets weekly almost.
Weekly.
Yeah.
We meet weekly, and we've changed that fire access several times. Meeting with Alex, and we've changed it a little bit, but he's got access in 2-3 places around the buildings.
Okay, so the fire trucks would go north on M over to Cross Country, and then Cross Country over to your campus, as opposed to taking Verona Road over to Epic Lane?
Well, I think they come up Epic Lane to Northern Lights, and then in on Northern Lights around that loop, or they could come in up Milky Way and then in through Hubble Drive.
Okay.
So there's 2 ways for them to get in.
To get to Campus 5?
Yes. We're gonna reconfigure some of the internal roads with this whole plan, and that's something we're working through right now.
Okay.
But by the time they're built, there will be 3 different points that they'll
Okay.
be able to access.
That makes me feel better, because the one drawing I got, I couldn't tell there was any, and I didn't
Yeah.
want to have to go back up and then come around, so.
That plan is migrated
Okay.
2-3 times.
All right, thank you. And then, if I may continue.
Go ahead.
So I noticed that part of the reconstruction of the pedestrian path will need to be done to do this.
Right.
Are you planning on switching it to the other side of the berm?
Yes, we are.
Awesome, okay.
So that's something we talked about the last
Yeah.
meeting, and we've researched that and think that's a good idea.
Okay, great. And then there, this is a blank campus. At one point, Campus 5 was here. It almost looked like there's room for Campus 6 somewhere, but now with the lake there, I guess I'm not seeing any more space. Is that kind of accurate? At least you couldn't get 5 buildings in. Is that accurate?
I could tell you that plan keeps developing over time, and that lake is gonna serve as a geothermal pond also for us, so we're still looking at if we had to add future buildings, where would we add them, but I really couldn't answer that right now.
Okay.
Our goal is still to stay away from the city streets. I mean, this campus has a 195-foot setback, and we're trying to stick with that, somewhere around 200 feet.
All right. Yeah, and Mr. Manley got the other question I had about the berm, so I agree with him. I think the buildings look nice, and wish you best of luck.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Potential motions? Mr. Lytle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, between the initial review last month and the good questions raised, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of the conditional use permit amendment for Epic Systems Corporation Group Development for the 5 office buildings at 1979 Milky Way.
We have a motion by Mr. Lytle. Is there a second? Seconded by, excuse me, by Mr. Getz. We are open for discussion on the motion. Any further discussion, comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. So, Mr. Richards, that will be on the agenda for the next council meeting. Okay, we are on agenda item 4B. Again, as I previously indicated, this would be an action by the Plan Commission. Questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. Manley?
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan review.
We have a motion by Mr. Manley. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Horsfall. We have a motion and a second. Questions, comments on the motion? Mr. Horsfall?
Just, do we want to say something about the, because there's a couple little things left to be kind of finally determined in the site plan? Do you want to leave it up to, I'm sorry. Just a couple things left to be kind of figured out for the final detail. Do you want to just leave that up to city staff to get the approval of that? Like the bike path, like the fire lane, that kind of stuff? Versus approving it without that information?
Mr. Sayre?
I'm comfortable not including it just because we meet with Epic
Okay.
pretty much on a weekly basis, so I'm pretty sure we'll figure that out. I know we still want to talk about the bike path, and stormwater still has to be reviewed by Bob as well too, but those are all items that it's pretty typical with Epic, so.
So we don't need them in the motion?
I don't think you do. I don't think you need to.
Other questions or comments on the motion? Again, the motion as before you is to approve the site plan review for Epic Systems Corporation. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We are now on agenda item number 5, which is a public hearing on a conditional use permit to allow a group development land use located at 103 Lincoln Street that would allow for the construction of a 13,850 square foot rehearsal and performing arts facility for the Verona Area Community Theater. I would accept the motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Getz. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We are now in the public hearing stage. Mr. Sayre, if you would provide the background, please.
This is a conditional use permit for VACT to allow for the construction of their performing arts facility. This is a group development, so similar to the last item on the agenda. In this situation, we have two buildings on one parcel. The second building in this parcel is the city's fire station that's currently under construction. VACT would be that additional building. This is a public hearing tonight as required by ordinance. This is a recommendation also to the Common Council.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. Same process as we did before. We are in the public hearing stage on this agenda item only. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak under the public hearing? Is there anyone that wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would accept the motion then to close the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Horsfall. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Getz. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. On agenda item 5A, if we were to take action, this would be a recommendation to the Common Council. And 5B, again, would be action solely by the Plan Commission. Mr. Sayre, if you would provide the background, please.
Thank you. This is a conditional use permit and site plan review for VACT to construct a approximately 14,000 square foot rehearsal and performing arts facility. This was initially discussed by the Plan Commission at your January meeting, so this is the final review of the project. VACT is requesting this to construct the new facility. It would have performing arts space or performance space and also rehearsal space. It would have a 150 seat performance area also for smaller shows. Larger shows would still be performed at the high school. Tentatively, they're planning on starting construction in the spring of 2015, depending on fundraising. City staff reviewed the project based upon the city's bulk requirements for the institutional zoning district and also the downtown overlay, and it does meet all those requirements. Parking to the, access to the site would be from Lincoln Street. The first northern access point would be for two-way traffic to provide in and out access. There'd also be a drop-off area in the front of the facility for cars and possibly some small buses. If people are utilizing that drop-off area, they would then exit out the rear of the property. This would be labeled as one-way only. So if you're dropping off a child or an adult, you'd come through, drop here, and then swing out through the back side of the property. The site itself provides 37 dedicated parking spaces. Additional parking is available in the fire station parking lot and also City Hall, which is located off the screen here, off the left side of the screen. There are two landscaping islands that will have bridges crossing the drainage swale. Those swales will allow people to park in the fire station parking lot and then obviously walk across and provide additional access as well too. Staff has no concerns with the parking. Obviously, the code requires 38. They have 37 shown. With the shared parking in the area, we believe that it works. We also have no concerns with the access at this time. One item that was brought up at the last Plan Commission meeting was a possible bus drop-off location. VACT has said again that they don't plan on having any large school buses come in here. It actually would be impossible because it's just not designed for that. But kind of listening to the comment and understanding that there could be a possibility in the future, they have a bus drop-off area kind of in the front or on Lincoln Street on the west side of the facility. You can kind of see a piece of concrete here. That's intended to be a drop-off location for buses, also an additional drop-off location for visitors or people performing at the facility as well too. So if the parking lot would look full, you could still pull up here. There'd be a small flight of stairs they could walk up, but they could easily have access to the door as well. So I guess in response to the Plan Commission comment from the last meeting, they're showing this now as a large school bus drop-off location. They can get buses in here, your smaller kind of shorter buses that you see around town, usually like a senior transportation option. You could fit that bus in the parking lot, but that large school bus, which they don't plan on, but if it ever did happen, they could utilize the street. Staff has no concerns with that. We think it's actually a smart idea. We'll need to label that as a city as 15-minute parking or a drop-off and pick up only in that location, but we'll do that in the near future. Drainage and stormwater for the site was master planned as part of the fire station. The ponds are located east of the VACT building and south of the fire station. Staff has no concerns at this time. Architecturally, very similar to what you saw last time. Lots of glass in the front entrance. They'll be using glass, brick material, which is the reddish brown material intended to complement the fire station on the property. The fire station will have more of a reddish tint to it. This will have reddish, orangish type hue to it as well too. So staff believes it'll blend nicely with the fire station. There will be metal accents as well. You can see some metal accents above the window. Once again, this is the eastern elevation, more glass, more brick. It's a very nice looking facility. Finally, the backside, which was discussed in the last plan commission meeting, they're proposing the backside to be just the metal panel. That's due to obviously a cost issue, but also from the fact that that's abutting the bike trail. For the most part, the bike trail has a very dense wooded area. There's also a slight berm along the trail as well too, so that will not be very heavily visible. To kind of counteract this view from Lincoln Street, the applicant is proposing some larger arborvitae plantings there to kind of break up that wall as well too. Staff has no concerns with this. I think if it becomes an issue, one of the things staff has recommended to the VACT is to consider painting a mural on the backside of the building, kind of to go with the flavor of the facility. They've also suggested they could possibly hang some art out there as well too, just to kind of break up that wall as well too. But the look of it, the reality is that it faces the bike trail, and I don't think anyone's really going to see or notice it, so staff has no concerns with it. So with all that being said, staff recommends the Plan Commission recommend the Common Council approve the conditional use permit to allow a group development land use that would allow for the construction of a 13,850 square foot rehearsal and performing arts facility located at 103 Lincoln Street. And second, staff recommends the Plan Commission approve the site plan to allow for the construction of the performing arts facility to be located at 103 Lincoln Street. I know the representatives from VACT are here tonight. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions, and the architects are here as well too, and they'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. Again, we are on agenda item 5A. Are there any questions, comments, or potential motions? Mr. Getz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question, or just a clarification regarding the shared parking arrangement. I'm assuming, and I know this was a concern with the ad hoc committee about the fire and EMS building, when there are rehearsals or performances going on, they're still going to be, as part of that fire department parking lot, dedicated parking and restricted parking. Heaven forbid, should there be a need for responding EMS and firefighters to park there, correct?
Mr. Sayre or Mr. Burns?
Yeah, that's correct. Looking at the fire station portion of this plan, the parking stalls that are located adjacent to the fire and EMS building are planned to be signed for emergency personnel only. There's also additional area where there's potential for responders to park, even if the lot would be full, in the large concrete area next to the training facility.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Getz. Good question. Other questions? Mr. Horsfall?
Are there hours of operation that need to be identified in a site plan?
Mr. Sayre?
I guess you could. I'm not sure what we limit it to. I guess that'd be the question of, do we want to put a limit on it or not? I guess you could if there was a concern that we shared, but I don't believe that we need to. I mean, I think, knowing VACT, if there was a parking issue, if there was a hours issue, we could deal with that. I think if you look around the neighborhood too, we have the fire station, we have City Hall to the south, and across the street we have a manufacturing use. So I personally don't see any issues with the hours.
Other questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. Linder?
Yeah, is there any signage on the near the street or just on the building?
Mr. Sayre, if you would, please.
There would be building signage, there'd be wall signage on the building itself, which I think was on the elevations. They're also proposing a sign, I believe it's right here at that location. And it would just say VACT or something similar to that. I mean, so maybe a ground sign or something.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because you potentially wouldn't be able to see it coming from going north on Lincoln Street. But overall, I just want to comment, I like the bus stop idea and or drop-off spot. I think that's a good idea, kind of alleviate some of the questions I had about the drop-off zone in front. And you know, obviously, last time I said it looks good. I agree. I mean, I haven't changed my mind, so hope it works out for you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Linder. Other questions, comments, motions? Mr. Horsfall?
At this time, I'd like to recommend to the Common Council to approve a conditional use permit to allow the group development land use that would allow the construction of a 13,850 square foot rehearsal and performing arts facility located at 103 Lincoln Street.
We have a motion by Mr. Horsfall. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Linder. We are now open for discussion on that motion. Is there any further discussion, comments? I think we've all seen this before. I think we had very positive feedback for the applicant, and we're all really looking forward to this project moving along. Seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That motion carries, and this will be on the next Common Council agenda as well. Now we are on agenda item 5B, which would be action by the Plan Commission for site plan review. Questions, comments, motions? Mr. Linder?
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan for the Verona Area Community Theater to allow for the construction of a 13,850 square foot rehearsal and performing arts facility located at 103 Lincoln Street.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Getz. We are open for discussion on the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We are now on agenda item number 6, which is a public hearing for a precise implementation plan for a planned unit development located on Lot 30 of the second addition to Prairie Oak subdivision, located at the northeast corner of Prairie Way Boulevard and Prairie Oaks Drive. The proposed PIP would allow for the construction of a 111-unit senior living complex. I would accept the motion to open the public hearing. We have a motion by Mr. Manley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Horsfall. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are in the public hearing stage. Mr. Sarah, if you would provide the background, please.
Thank you. This is a request tonight for a 111-unit senior housing complex. This is part of a larger planned unit development. Tonight is the precise implementation plan, the PIP. This is actually the last step for this project. There was an initial review by the Plan Commission, I believe in December. By ordinance, all PIPs require a public hearing, so this is the public hearing tonight at the Plan Commission, and this will be a recommendation to the Common Council.
Thank you, Mr. Sarah. With that, we are in the public hearing stage. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this agenda item? If you would introduce yourself, please, Brad.
Thank you, Mayor. Brad Steiner. I'm here as Alderman of District 3, tonight representing a small faction of people who live near this area, and they're very concerned about traffic. This is a reoccurring theme all through this development from the get-go 3 years ago. The same people expressed concern. A high traffic time is morning when people are going to work, having exit points to get out of this development. And then, of course, when everyone's returning in the afternoon, coming home, there's the traffic from schools during the school year, lack of area for children to play and move about safely. It's a congested area. I explained that this is primarily elderly development, but people reminded me that elderly people usually have visitors, and these visitors are usually grandchildren, great-grandchildren, who would like to go out for a walk with grandpa or grandma. This theme has surfaced many times, and we've been addressing it. I'm here representing a small group of people. The majority of people understand what's going on and are happy, but especially the elderly people in our city. This will be a nice place for them to live and age and stay active and stay in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this agenda item in the public hearing? Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would accept the motion then to close the public hearing. We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Getz. We have motion and second to close the public hearing. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We're to take action on this evening. On agenda item 6A, this would be a recommendation to the Common Council. Mr. Sayre, any additional background, please?
Thank you. So the request tonight is the PIP for Knoll Manor. It'd be the 111 units of senior housing. This project would include 54 independent living units, 43 assisted living units, and 14 memory care units. This is part of a larger planned development that the GDP was approved in November of 2013. As part of that GDP, allowed for the construction of these 111 units and also allowed for the construction of 108 market rate apartments. Currently, there are 76 apartments under construction. These are these 3 buildings here. The senior component is located approximately in this area. And then there are 2 additional apartment buildings that will be constructed in the future by the applicant as well. The kind of line, squiggly line here is the existing stormwater pond. To the east, kind of to the bottom of the map there, that's Redden Soccer Park. There's also a future planned city path that the city will be constructing along this property line here, which would extend all the way over to Enterprise Drive and pick up the existing kind of path network that we have already going into the Harmony Hills area. We have an existing senior housing facility here, and we also have 2 condominium buildings located in this area as well. So the project itself, the city reviewed it from a bulk standpoint. This is a part of a planned development that allowed some exemptions in it. One of the exemptions was an exemption from the front yard setback. However, this request does meet the ordinance requirements for that. It meets all the setback requirements except for one bulk item. The one bulk item that does not meet is the height requirement. The ordinance requires a maximum height of 35 feet. The proposed building as it stands right now is 37.5 feet tall. It's actually 2.5 feet taller. Staff doesn't have a concern with this slight deviation. However, kind of procedurally, the applicant will either go back and need to amend the plan development or obtain a conditional use permit to exceed the height. So if the plan commission decides to move this forward, that's one of the items that you'll have to address in your motion as a condition of approval regarding the height. Staff would recommend that conditional use permit just to kind of cleanly deal with it immediately. Access to the site, there'd be 2 access points from Prairie Way Boulevard. This is Prairie Way Boulevard kind of wrapping through here. You'd have a front area where you'd have a drop-off canopy where people could be dropped off in this canopy area. There'd also be an access point here for the underground parking. There'd also be this northern access point, which I believe is mostly used by employees. Then you'd have obviously parking in the rear as well too. Staff has no concerns with access at this time. We are working with the path that's located south of here, obviously, to construct that. We also want to make a connection into Redden Soccer Park. That's kind of a key for us to make sure we provide that connection. I actually had a phone call today from Mesa to discuss this, and Mesa and the city and Dane County will be sitting down to kind of talk about how we can kind of make that happen within the next year or 2. So that is moving forward slowly. The applicant's proposing 113 parking spaces. And that is based upon the ratio that was established by the operator of this facility. They operate a lot of facilities in Iowa and Wisconsin, and that was kind of the ratio they targeted, and that provides 1.01 spaces per unit. Parking at facilities like this, to be honest, are kind of across the board. Willow Point provides 0.81 spaces per unit. And then we also have the Prairie Oak Senior Housing Complex, which is actually just south of here and just kind of north of Pasquale's. That provides 1.31 spaces per unit. So this kind of falls in between the 2 facilities that we have in this area. So I guess once again, we talked about this during the initial review. I would encourage you to kind of take a look at the parking, see what works. Staff did a review in the ordinance. The ordinance doesn't cleanly define a senior living complex as a flat-out number. You have to kind of break the units apart. So what I did was I broke apart the assisted living and the memory care units, which requires 1 space per 6 beds, and then I also took a look at the independent care units, or independent living units, which I classified as apartment units, which I struggle a little bit with that classification because it's not truly an apartment for market rate. It's more of a senior apartment that in general people living in those units don't have as much, don't have as many vehicles. So, but if you take that, look at that, if you follow the code directly, it'd be 145 parking spaces would be required. Seems like a lot to me, but the plan development allowed plan commission discretion and discretion from the applicant when it came to parking. The applicant feels 113 spaces is appropriate. I think it's appropriate. I think they're also showing this 2-story, 16-unit expansion that would have to be amended at a future GDP. I think if parking issues pop up at that point, that might be the very time to take a look at that as part of that amendment, if we're interested in granting that amendment. But once again, I would encourage the Plan Commission to provide feedback to the applicants on this issue. But like I said, I'm comfortable with the 113. It falls in between the 2 other facilities in the area, and I think it's appropriate. One item that the applicant's going to have to work through is with Mesa regarding no parking signs during soccer events. I think that's going to be a challenge out here in the parking lot, and they're going to have to sit down with Chris Lay and have that conversation to making sure that parents and soccer participants aren't basically parking the site full during events. So they'll need to work with Mesa on that item. Drainage and stormwater plans have been submitted to the city. We're still going through the review process for that. As of right now, we don't have any concerns with those. We'll continue reviewing those. A landscaping plan was submitted as part of the project by ordinance. 4,112 points are required. The applicant is proposing 4,227 through a variety of plantings of lower shrubs, trees, and etc. The site itself will also have a larger patio and outdoor plaza off the back as an amenity to the residents and guests living there. Staff has no concerns with the proposed landscaping plan. Architecturally, the applicant's proposing a variety of building materials. The intent is to blend it with the previously approved and currently under construction Murray Glen Apartments. They're proposing the use of stone veneer, fiber cement, brick, and split face masonry on the lower levels. Staff has really no concerns with the materials. One item I guess I'll point out here is one of the things they did on the site was they put the 3-story component closer to that stormwater pond, and they kept the 2-story component to the northern part. And part of the reason they did that was elevations. It gets higher as you go north. But more importantly, as you kind of look what the city has planned to the north, we plan residential, probably some single-family houses to the north. They're trying to keep the bulk of the building to the south towards the stormwater pond where you have no one, and obviously the existing apartment buildings, and trying to transition a better 2-story component to the future residential to the north. I think that was a great idea by the architect and applicant, and I think it will help lend itself in the future as development occurs to the north. The materials itself are high quality. The picture on the screen, it's got the brick, got a little orange on us, but I know the applicant is here tonight and has material samples if the Plan Commission is interested in seeing those. Staff believes materials meet the requirements of the ordinance. I believe that it's also consistent with the previously approved Murray Glen Apartments. Contains high quality materials. It's got a nice look to it. I don't have any concerns with it at all. The city does have a residential phasing policy in place that caps the number of multifamily units that can be constructed in the city. This is one of the projects that we looked at as part of that, and this project is actually exempt from that. Senior housing projects are exempt from our phasing policy, but I would just like to point out that we do have that in place. So that staff recommends the Plan Commission recommend to the Common Council approval of the PIP for Knoll Manor to allow for the construction of 111-unit senior living complex with the following condition: that prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant shall either amend the general development plan or obtain a conditional use permit to allow a building height greater than 35 feet.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. As Mr. Sayre indicated, we do have the applicant and representatives here this evening to answer any questions or provide any additional feedback or comments. Are there any questions? Mr. Horsfall.
Bob, is there any comment you want to bring about the traffic? And how much, is there a number that senior housing has, or?
Mr. Gunlock, please.
Well, the traffic, you have like 54 units that are going to have vehicles going to them. The rest of the units are either assisted living or memory care. You probably will not have vehicles there. I'm just doing a rough count here. You might have 74 to 80 vehicles there for the people that are living in the unit. Their biggest shift is 21 employees. That's 21 vehicles, a total of 100 vehicles per day coming and going to this, it's pretty small traffic count. You have two access points. One is Prairie Way Boulevard. The other one is Prairie Oaks Drive off of Enterprise Drive. Traffic split, that's 50 per entrance there. I really don't see a problem with that amount of additional traffic.
Thank you, Mr. Guttenlock. Additional questions, comments? Mr. Linder, please.
Yeah, for the applicant, where would you put additional parking if we're looking at more parking?
Oh, thank you. There are additional opportunities that we had parking originally placed. We had removed those based on overall operation counts that we felt were adequate in serving the site. If you look at, Adam, can you bring that site plan back up, please?
Could you introduce yourself as well, please?
Yeah, I'm Justin Frame with JSD. The internal front parking area where you'll see there's some green space that's allocated to stormwater and landscaping currently is an area that can potentially accommodate additional parking stalls. However, we feel it's better served with a landscape entry feature.
That's the southwest corner?
That would be the, yeah, exactly.
Okay. No, upper left there.
I think what Jason was referring to is where Adam does have the cursor now.
Correct. Is it just west of that kind of fountain feature?
Yeah, so right off
Right.
that front entry,
Oh,
turnaround drive, that internal space.
Right there.
Gotcha.
That's currently shown as landscape and open space.
Okay. I'm okay with the parking. But if it is an issue, it's something we need to look at in the future. I'm all for not putting in more parking than we need to, but I guess that's why I was asking if there's a room for additional, because I know you got the 16 unit too, so that'll, would that 16 unit be normal senior, or would that be memory care, or
I believe that
assisted?
would be assisted
So
living.
probably lower parking requirements for that, yeah.
That whole wing is assisted living on that side of the
Okay.
site.
All right, and the other question I have is to the bottom of the drawing, which I believe is to the east, is the soccer fields. Do the soccer fields come right up to that property?
Along the east edge of the property, there's open space there that kind of creates a transitional edge, and then there's also a parking, it's currently surface gravel parking right now that's
Okay.
serving Mesa facility. But there is a fairly substantial open space band, and that would be used for the grade transition and making that connection from the path to the park. So I guess to answer your question, there's not soccer fields right up next
Okay.
to the site.
All right, reason I was asking is for if there was potentially be any lighting issues, cross lighting with cars pulling in those parking lots, shining into the soccer players, but if there's a parking lot between them, I guess
Right.
the soccer field's probably not all that concerned with it.
Right, there's no soccer fields directly adjacent to that rear parking.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Horsfall, please.
This question for Adam. You have inventory of single-family housing. Do we have an inventory of senior housing in the city of Verona? I'm more curious than anything.
Mr. Sayre?
I don't know. I know the applicant did prepare a market study as part of this. When they were working on their general development plan, they actually had a company go out and do a market analysis, a feasibility analysis of this. And I believe the study came out and said there was a need for additional senior housing in the city. I don't know off the top of my head. I would suspect as obviously the baby boomers get older, I think that the trend I keep hearing is that when the baby boom starts to age and starts to retire, there is this strong fear and concern that obviously people are living longer and need these type of facilities. So I think, if there wasn't a need now, which there probably is, I think it's definitely coming. I think you'll see a lot more of these occurring potentially in Verona or elsewhere around the whole area just because of that baby boomers are retiring.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to the next question. Should we start thinking about where potentially we should be planning these facilities, or just let the market choose the facility or choose the location around the city?
Mr. Sayre?
That's a great question. I think to an extent, yeah, you want to take a look at where these are going. Obviously, this is a nice location because you have Redden, so you have the nice feature they can look at. You're close enough to, obviously, Pasquale's and some of the businesses there as well, too, that if someone wanted to walk, they can easily get there as well, too. And this obviously provides that assisted living and memory care component as well, too. I think the challenge is if you try to designate something straight directly as senior housing, I think every time someone's going to probably come in and ask, I want to do apartments there. I think you're fortunate the developer, obviously, during the GDP said he wanted to do senior housing as part of this, and it doesn't happen all the time. So I think it'd be nice to do it if we could identify certain areas. I think that'd be ideal, but you know, it's tough to require it, I guess, in the sense of we don't make our land use plans and neighborhood plans that strict when it comes down to the specific type of use itself. But I think it's a great point and something to kind of consider as we look at our future planning.
Other questions? Mr. Manley, please.
Just a question on the size of Lot 30. How many acres is the parcel?
Mr. Sarah?
I'll defer, see if Justin might know that question off the top of his head. I want to say it's about 3 acres, and I could be wrong in that. It looks like he's digging through some things as I'm talking. If maybe we can go back to that question if other ones. 3.65. Okay.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Lytle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is probably my favorite part of one of my least favorite developments. So I'm happy to support this particular phase of your development. And I do, as I had from the very beginning, have concerns both about traffic and the density of housing in this particular part of the city. So while I'm supportive of the proposal you're bringing for us tonight, future expansions of both this development and the Phase 4, I'm going to be very hesitant to add anything more until the traffic counts have risen up from the units currently under construction as well as the units proposed for senior housing. But that being said, I'm in favor of both the details of the development and its proximity and the amenities you're bringing. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Lytle. Additional questions, comments? Mr. Getz, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For either Mr. Gunlock or the applicant, the planned stormwater retention on the site, is that, and since I'm new, I don't know all the ins and outs of how the adjoining parcels all connect here. Is that mostly self-contained on the parcel, or does that have a small or a large impact on the retention basin that's right next to it?
Mr. Gunlock, please.
The detention basin to the south was sized to serve this whole area, and their peak stormwater, or the peak control, is to the south. They have some on-site facilities that take care of infiltration. But other than that, the majority of the stormwater is treated to the south in the large regional basin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Getz. Thank you, Mr. Gunlock. Additional questions, comments? Just Mr. Linder? I was just going to make a comment as far as I have not personally done a study as far as our analysis of the need, but everything that I hear from people in the city and nearby that are looking for places for their older relatives, there definitely is a need. The need is now. It's not just coming, it's now. So I'm very excited about this project as well, and we'll fully support it. Mr. Linder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion to recommend that the Common Council approve the precise implementation plan for Knoll Manor to allow for the construction of a 111-unit senior living complex with the following condition. Prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant shall either amend the general development plan or obtain a conditional use permit to allow a building height greater than 35 feet.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Horsfall. Questions or comments on the motion? Questions or comments? I'm not seeing any, so all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. This item will also be on the next council agenda. Thank you. We are now on agenda item number 7, which is a public hearing on the review and adoption of the City of Verona North Neighborhood Plan. The proposed plan would modify Chapter 8 of the city's comprehensive plan by providing details for planned future land uses, utilities, parks, street networks, and other details for lands generally bounded by County Highway PD to the north, the Ice Age Trail to the east, Country View Road to the west, and the City of Verona boundary to the south. I would accept the motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Horsfall. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lytle. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Sayre, if you would provide the background, please.
This is a public hearing tonight for our North Neighborhood Plan. This contains approximately 1,600 acres of land. By state statute, we need to hold at least one public hearing. This is the public hearing before the Plan Commission. I do have a brief presentation, which I can do now, or I can do it after the public hearing. I guess I'll leave it up to the Plan Commission, but this will be a resolution tonight to adopt and recommend if you decide to go forward with it.
Mr. Sayre, I would suggest that we do the presentation now, if you don't mind.
That's fine. So I guess to real briefly start off, what is a neighborhood plan? Neighborhood plan is a specific plan for a certain area of the city. We obviously have our comprehensive plan, which is designed to be more general, but the neighborhood plan is intended to be more specific. The city has identified a variety of growth areas. The north neighborhood is the yellow area on the map. We've already adopted neighborhood plans for the kind of the bluish and orange area here as well too, and part of the next area that we'll focus on is the brownish area as you go east as well. But tonight in general we're looking at this kind of orange color area here, and this map is from our comprehensive plan. One of the items I guess to point out as we get into this is that we do currently have an agreement with the City of Madison. We entered into this agreement in 1996, and there's a few things that this agreement has created that impacts the planning for this area. First of all, it does require a buffer along County Highway PD and County Highway M, and by buffer I mean landscape buffer, and we've talked about this before, but once again this requirement states that a buffer needs to be installed from the intersection of PD and M extending 1,000 feet kind of east and west and north and south, and the buffer should be 300 feet wide. So the properties or the areas that it impacts in the city is kind of this upside down L, I guess, and then the same side over here you have the same type of buffer feature as well too that is being required by this agreement with Madison. It also establishes a 5 points planning area where any plans or any development within that area has to be approved by either municipality. The best example for that is the Meritor Clinic that was actually reviewed by the city's plan commission. They also have a landscape berm type buffer feature on the front of their property. And the agreement also establishes jurisdictional boundaries. In general, lands south of County Highway PD are the City of Verona, and lands west of Shady Oak Lane actually were not addressed in that agreement. This agreement expires here in 2016 of next year. It renews automatically unless either party notifies the other 1 year in advance of its intentions not to review. We currently are in active conversations with the City of Madison regarding this agreement. They're ongoing, and I think both municipalities want to have an agreement in place. But obviously, that July 22nd of 2015, when notice would have to be due, is coming up here. So I know the council's been involved in that as well too, and we'll keep going forward with those conversations. One thing I wanted to point out in the plan, especially regarding the buffer itself, I know that's been a point of contention for I know both kind of landowners on both the west and east side of the road. And I guess for myself, from my standpoint, I think there's probably a better way we could utilize that land. But there is language in the plan that states, if the existing agreement is amended, the language within the revised agreement shall supersede the requirements of this plan. So currently in the plan, which I'll get into in a second, we have that buffer requirement in place, and what the language that is proposed in the actual North Neighborhood Plan says is that if for some reason that buffer goes away, if for some reason the buffer is reduced, if it's changed in any fashion, we don't have to come back and amend the plan. It basically says whatever City of Madison and City of Verona agree upon in any kind of agreement, that will supersede what's in the plan itself. So just wanted to point that out at this time. This is the 5 Points planning area that I mentioned as part of that agreement. Any plans, any development in that area on the south side of PD has to be approved by Madison as well as Verona, and vice versa. And anything on the north side has to be approved by Madison and Verona as well too. And Meritor Clinic is that example. So existing land uses within the north neighborhood. In general, a lot of the land is currently being farmed. On the west side of the site, this purple area is the EPICS campus, land that they currently use, control, or have some plans for. That kind of orangish type brownish color, those are active quarries. We have 2 churches within the planning area, one here at 9 Mountain and County Highway PD, and also one on County Highway M. We have the substation. We have a large swath of open space that's been planned as open space by Dane County. And then we have a scattering of the kind of the yellow area, which are just single family homes, and this tan, I guess we'll call it. It's agricultural land that's currently being farmed. So most of the land is currently being farmed, but there's a scattering and variety of uses in the area. One of the challenges as we kind of take a look at this area, obviously, are the active quarries. Reclaiming those is always a challenging prospect sometimes. And then obviously, as we've talked about before as well too, this central area, right in this area, it's part of a closed stormwater basin. And what that means is that when it rains, it kind of fills up like a bathtub, and there's really no outlet for it. You can't just pull the plug and let it out. So as part of this, the stormwater out of this pond will have to be pumped out out of the basin during larger storm events, which I guess leads me to the future land uses, which is a map that I think is very similar to what the Planning Commission has seen before. But the large stormwater pond that I was kind of referencing a second ago is this kind of green blob right here. That's approximately 25 acres in size. That's a regional facility that will, during larger storm events, a lot of this kind of central planning area will drain into, and it'll fill up, and we'll have to pump it out. So we're still working through the details on this, but ultimately this plan kind of provides for that type of facility. The large purple area on the west side is planned for future epic growth of some type, whether it be farming, geothermal, just kind of planning for their future use. We plan on this old quarry on the east side of the road to be reclaimed, consistent with their kind of mitigation plan. The church would remain, kind of jumping, I guess, back to the east side of County Highway M. We have a large green space that's been protected. That's an area that's currently heavily wooded. It's challenging for us to serve. I think the intention of Dane County and the City of Madison and Verona staff would be that'd be an ideal place to kind of preserve that, because we just can't serve it. Kind of getting into the kind of the heart of the plan itself, the yellow area is single-family homes. And also the brown, kind of darker or lighter brown area, those are also single-family homes that we're calling wooded residential. For the wooded residential areas, we anticipate lot sizes in the 12 to 15,000 square foot range, a little bit larger than typically in the city, and that's the intent of that, is to hopefully preserve some of the trees in those areas. So that light brown area is actually areas that are wooded. So with the larger lot sizes, we might be able to actually protect some of those trees. The yellow area, as I said, is single family. Some possibly smaller lots, which would be 6,000 square feet, which is consistent with our CR zoning. And then we'd also have lots probably 8 to 10,000 square feet, and those are just estimates, but that's consistent with our NR neighborhood residential zoning district as well too. Initially, we anticipate approximately 900 single family homes in this area. Moving on to the darker brown areas, we anticipate that being multifamily areas, most likely apartments or condos of some type. In that area, we anticipate 200 to 300 residential units for multifamily. And then we have this red area as well, which would be commercial. There is a potential in the commercial area for possible mixed use. One of the things in the plan is says if there are additional requests for apartments in this area, the plan recommends not creating additional dark brown areas. We'd recommend directing people to that red area, and if they really wanted to have apartments, looking at that mixed use type development where you'd have first floor be retail or commercial of some type, and the second or third floor would then be that apartment use as well. So if there were additional ones, we'd want to keep them in that area. Unlike other plans we've done in the past, the kind of darker brown multifamily areas aren't scattered about the neighborhoods. That was one comment that we've talked about before, trying to kind of put those multifamily land uses with higher traffic counts, with more people, put them closer to the commercial land uses, and also put them towards the busier roads and not sprinkle them around the neighborhoods. I know that's a comment I've heard from citizens, and obviously, like I said, the Plan Commission and Council too. So this plan kind of reflects that as well too. The blue area here, that would be a future about 10, 11, 12 acre elementary school site. It's a site the school district has looked at and they're interested in. The location of that is kind of based upon what the school district has said they'd like to see. We've kind of talked about a variety of locations, but that was the spot they requested to have there. So that's kind of the reason for that kind of falling in place. The little dots you actually see on the plan itself, those are access points into the neighborhood. Some of these accesses will be with traffic signals, other ones may not be, or might be set up in the future to have that as well too. But those are points where there will be traffic coming into the neighborhood from those major roads and access points. The largest road coming through the neighborhood will be this kind of east-west collector that will start at County Highway M. This will be a traffic signal here and ultimately make its way somehow through the quarry and pick up 9 Mountain Road. We kind of see that as a future reliever for County Highway PD to get people to Epic, but also once again to provide people living in this neighborhood who might be working at Epic an easy way to get there as well too. We're also trying to provide some connections from the neighborhood to the south as well, making sure those roads come through and at least connect into this neighborhood. So the key from a transportation standpoint is just connections. Obviously, I should just point out that these plans are obviously more specific than our comprehensive plan, but ultimately it's up to the developer to come forward with the plan itself. So when you see development, what we're going to be looking at is, if you adopt this, is it consistent with the plan? Now, it's not going to be exactly as shown on here. This is intended to be a development plan. It's intended to be a neighborhood plan to kind of show people this is what we want and kind of leave some flexibility up to developers to kind of at least look at different ways of doing this based upon topography and other features as well too. But this is generally the land use that we're taking a look at. Another drawing that you've seen before, but once again, looking at all the road improvements that are planned here. 2015, 2016, 9 Mountain Road will be 2015, 9 Mountain Road will be reconstructed. It's a city project. 2016, 2017, the red line for County Highway M. That project is a joint project with Verona, Madison, Dane County. Part of that project, that's when sewer will be run to the property. So the key to making sure the city has our ducks in a row, in essence, is to make sure that we're in a position by the time that sewer is brought to this property that we can hopefully have some development moving forward. As many of you know, we are quickly running out of single-family lots in the city with not the best prospects on the horizon. This is probably our best chance to kind of have some future single-family growth in the city, since we're lacking those lots right now. 2017, County Highway PD going east will be reconstructed, and then 2018 County Highway PD from the intersection here to Woods Road to be reconstructed as well as a 4-lane highway. So basically for the next 4 or 5 years, or 4 years, this area is going to be quite difficult to travel around due to the road construction, but there's a lot of things happening out in this area. I guess that's the point of showing it. Once again, we have our road connections here. The dotted yellow lines are future off-street path connections. Once again, trying to connect to the existing neighborhood, existing parks, also trying to provide connections to Epic down busy roads as well too. But just showing this is the areas that we're looking at for possible off-street paths. Phasing, once again, the phasing of this is going to come off County Highway M with its utilities, and it'll phase to the west. It could also come from the south as well. There's approximately 80-acre piece here owned by Tony Heinrichs that could actually develop right now if he was ready to. So most likely development will occur from the south and from the east, and then transition west across that area, kind of up the hill as you go. So key recommendations in the plan itself. One of the recommendations is there is a variety of design standards listed in the document itself. Coming back before development happens and actually adopting design standards. I think as part of that conversation, it might be good to look at citywide, do we want design standards or not, but just taking a look at how we want development to look and getting that down and codifying that before development happens. Second is providing pedestrian access and amenities as part of all housing projects. Obviously that includes sidewalks and paths, as I previously discussed, and also providing street and sidewalk connectivity throughout the whole neighborhood. So as I said, this is part of the agreement that we currently have with the City of Madison. The City of Madison Council has adopted a resolution to approve this. I was at the Madison Plan Commission meeting last Monday night and presented to their plan commission, and they've recommended for it. So this will be going to the Madison Common Council tomorrow, hopefully for adoption. And like I said, that's based upon our current agreement that says that all plans within that 5-point planning area has to be adopted by the city of Madison, and vice versa, their plans have to be adopted by us. A couple comments that came out of the City of Madison Plan Commission meeting. I think there was a considerable amount of questions regarding transit, and the comment I heard was they request that we consider transit more heavily before development occurs. I explained that was just kind of discussed at the last Plan Commission meeting, and in general, we don't get as detailed as they do in their plans. But they request that they encouraged us, I guess, to be a little more detailed. They also talked a lot about the buffer and questions regarding what's the purpose of the buffer. I think there was some interest on them of, looking at, is that the best land use? Is that not the best land use? There was kind of some debate there on that of, is this the best thing for obviously Verona and obviously Madison as well too. They want to know the impact of the buffer on development, and obviously there also was some questions of possibly extending that buffer the entire way down County Highway PD and County Highway M, and possibly reducing it in size. But there was interest from at least one Plan Commission member to extend that buffer even further. But like I said, at the end of the day, those are their comments. It was adopted by their Plan Commission. It will go to their council tomorrow night. Once again, here's kind of the schedule, how it lays out. Verona Plan Commission tonight, Madison Common Council tomorrow night, and then if this goes forward from this Plan Commission tonight, it would go to our council on the 9th. I think our ultimate intention, obviously, is to submit to the Regional Planning Commission to start the urban service area amendment process. It can be a longer process, so I think our concern as a staff is to kind of make sure we keep this moving. We're obviously targeting that 2017, kind of end of 2017 deadline of making sure we have our, as I said before, our ducks in a row, so we're ready for development. So with that, that is my presentation tonight. I know we're still in the public hearing, but once that wraps up, I'd be happy to answer any questions the Plan Commission has.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. And we are in the public hearing stage, so if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak specifically on this agenda item, again, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Brad Steiner, District 3 Alderman. This is not part of my district, but during the meetings I had with my constituents on the northern part of District 3, primarily Harmony Hills and Enterprise and that area, these people for the last 15, 18 years have watched dump truck after dump truck go into this area and dump rocks, dirt, fill into this area. And they wanted me to tell them the answer, and I didn't have it. I didn't know. I've watched those trucks go in there too. I just assumed they're getting rid of stuff and trying to get the water level to change so maybe it could be developed. But maybe if someone who knows more about that would address that, these people might rest a little bit easier. Almost every one of those folks also, once again, raised the big concern about where are you going to put all the cars if you put 1,000 homes in this 1,600 acres? And I said, well, I don't know anything about 1,000 homes, but I know there's going to be a large residential development there, and I'm sure there will be roads to get those people out of that development. And of course, they interrupted me and they said, well, Mr. Steiner, you know that there's like 9,000 cars that use M on a daily basis, and there's probably that many using PD now going east and west. How are you going to get all those people on there? And I said the naughty word. I said probably stoplights. And they just ranted on me for a long time about, I used to be able to get to Madison in 10 minutes, shop at Westtown, be home in another 10 minutes. Now it takes me an hour to get there and an hour to get back. What's it going to be like in 10 years? And my last one is something that came up, it was kind of funny. I walk as part of my routine, and I went over to Mr. Manley and Mr. Linder's area several times over the last month or so, and some people who think they know me stopped me and wanted to know if I knew anything, how that was going to change their life in that area. And I know Mr. Manley has brought this up in the past, when you extend those roads and move traffic through that beautiful neighborhood up there, all woods. You get into Cross Country Circle, beautiful area, still belongs to the town, but it'll probably end up in the city. Those people are really worried about their change of lifestyle for the sake of development, to bring more people to our city, to give them homes, force the school to grow again and again. There are people that are very concerned about these things, and they're talking about them. And some of you maybe have heard it already. I'm sure Mr. Linder and Mr. Manley have, because Mr. Manley has already mentioned this years ago when he was an alderman. So I promised them that I would express their point of views, even though it has none of my business, because it's not in District 3. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this agenda item?
Good evening. My name is Bill White. I'm an attorney in a suburb of Verona called Madison, and I'm happy to be here tonight and to be able to address you all. I'm actually here tonight on behalf of Jerry and Linda Endress, who are sitting in the back as if this was church, but we're here because, and I don't know, Adam, if you can put on the screen there was one slide in particular that highlighted them. They own approximately 38 acres in the southwest quadrant of PD and M. And yeah, that's a pretty good one. And they have a number of concerns about what's been going on, and they have been expressing these concerns for many years, and we still don't have answers to them. And I'd like to kind of go through them real briefly tonight. First of all, this is their primary home. They live there. This is they've been there for over 30 years. There is agriculture on site. This is Verona the way many of us remember it 30 years ago. Yet the proposed plan is vastly different than what they have invested in and raised their children. Of the 38 acres, 11 of them, over 11 acres, will be dedicated to green space and buffer zone. I've looked at that. I do a lot of this kind of work. I don't get it, but you know, maybe there's some good reason that the previous iteration showed a kind of a minor setback up at the corner. This iteration takes away virtually all of their access to PD and M. So we would like, and I was glad to hear that the City of Madison Plan Commission was a little skeptical about this, because we think that this is, we're not developers, we're people that live there. And so they would very much like to be able to keep that without devaluing their land. A second issue that has concerned them is, where are these M and PD center lines going to be? Is it going to move to the west for M? Is it going to move to the south for PD, which then moves all the buffer even more so into their territory? And they're feeling very kind of sensitive on that particular item, and it would be very helpful for us if we could nail down that. Another issue that has been out there is the construction of a sidewalk and bike path around the property. And who pays for that? They're not developers, they live there. What is the plan for them? Is the city planning to exercise eminent domain? Who's going to maintain these things? There's a great deal of personal pride, I think, in making sure that they're good citizens in the city of Verona, and would like to see the flip side to them too. An item that kind of came up today that I hadn't really appreciated was the fact that the property owners may be assessed a portion of the application fee to the Regional Plan Commission to extend the urban service area, should we decide to do that. We are in Verona. We would propose to stay, march with everyone else through that, but that was a sort of once again an unexpected unexpected expense. And so it may not be collected until later on. Does that mean it gains interest while it's sitting there? They have no desire to move or to develop, but it makes it sort of an incentive to get going. We need these questions answered, and we will continue to be bringing them up. We would submit that tonight it may be too soon to be acting on these, where at least one property owner who's been working at this since 2007. Jerry was just showing me a few emails from different staff people saying that we'll get to you on this, and they haven't gotten to us. So we would ask that it be postponed. And if nothing else, we would certainly like something in writing to give them assurance that because they have stayed with the City of Verona, the City of Verona will stay with them.
Thank you, Mr. White. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Anyone else that wishes to speak? It's your final opportunity on this one. Anyone wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would ask a motion then to close the public hearing. We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Getz. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and the public hearing is closed. So we are on agenda item 7A, which is discussion and possible action regarding resolution adopting and recommending the North Neighborhood Plan as an amendment to the City of Verona Comprehensive Plan. If we were to take action, this would be a recommendation to the Common Council. Questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. Manley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number of questions and a number of comments, and I think maybe the best place to start, Adam, if you wouldn't mind, would you bring your presentation back up? And could you go back to the slide with the 5 points planning area? Thank you. Ever since I first started on the Plan Commission back in 2006, I became aware of the boundary agreement and the buffer, which never made any sense to me, and I know I've expressed that often. Just looking at in a negotiation, one side gives up something and the other side gives up something, and hopefully at least in a good negotiation there's equity. And I look at this area and I look at what the City of Verona was asked to give up in that buffer and what the City of Madison was asked to give up. And I don't see really equity at all, unless at some point we think that that pond is going to get redeveloped into something, or the golf course. I mean, it's just, it doesn't make any sense at all. And it made even less sense to me when I saw this map of the 5 points planning area, which I wasn't even aware of. And it's just shocking to me that we would give the City of Madison this level of oversight into planning within our city in exchange for essentially nothing. I mean, I guess we had some oversight over the Meritor Clinic, which is fine, I guess. But we're trading their oversight over incredibly undeveloped but highly developable land for a golf course and land that's largely already developed. And I just think all of it is it's absurd. And I really hope that the city exercises its option this year to not renew what I think is just a master class in how to not do an equitable boundary agreement between two municipalities. Which kind of brings me to my next point on this map, and that is the open space area that's shown in the in the southwest quadrant of the Highway PD and M intersection. And I really hope that we don't have that kind of a buffer eating up all of that land that I think is very developable, whether it be for commercial or whatever other purpose. It strikes me as, you know, great commercial development land whenever the property owner decides to sell, if ever. But right now, the map is shown with the green buffer there, and I just wonder if reason prevails and we no longer are bound by the agreement that expires next year, would we be proposing to shift the red commercial and the brown multifamily areas to the east to occupy that area? Or how would, I mean, I think the plan should really reflect what we as a city would like that to look like, and I hope that we as a city don't think this is what it should look like.
Mr. Sayre?
Yes, I think if the buffer went away, you'd see the red kind of in that area, which would be basically expanded to the intersection. I think that's a drawing that you had seen at one point, I think in October. You'd have the blue extended, you'd have the, you know, this would become red here, you'd have the existing utility substation there, and this would be open space in this area. The reason, you know, like I said, is as Mr. White indicated, is from, there were drawings that it wasn't on there. The reason it was put back on there was just, quite frankly, it needs to be approved by Madison per the agreement, and I don't believe it would have been approved by Madison, or maybe wouldn't even gone forward with Madison if that buffer wasn't on there, because it wasn't consistent with it. And that was a comment that came from their staff. I mean, that's the reason why it came on here, or why it ended up back on the plan itself. You know, I'll just be honest, it wasn't my preference to put it back on, but it's it's the balance of moving this forward or having it hung out there for how long. It's a kind of a catch-22. It's, you know, so that's the reason why the ones in the past you saw it wasn't on there. Now why it kind of showed back up. I mean, that's just the flat-out reason of, I don't think this would be going forward with Madison. I don't think they would have taken it forward because it wasn't consistent with their agreement, and that was what their staff told us. But yeah, if it goes away, you'd see those colors kind of just shift along there as well. I mean, you'd basically see that red on the west side just go back to what it was, and this would go back to what it was back in October as well too.
Well, thank you for that explanation, and I appreciate knowing why the change was made, and I think you've just done a wonderful job of illustrating why it's such a bad idea to have the city of Madison essentially dictating decision-making for the city of Verona in this part of the city. I mean, I just don't see what benefit we get out of that. So, again, in the strongest terms possible, I really hope that the city does not continue that agreement going forward. I want to bring up the mass transit issue, which I guess I'm not surprised to hear was a big topic of discussion among the Madison City Council, because if I was running a bus service that wasn't making money, I'd want to try and get other communities to help me pay for it too. But I guess I was disappointed to see mass transit in the second version. When we first reviewed this, I had flagged buses as a significant concern. And, you know, I can tell you from the people who live in the area of the north neighborhood, there isn't a desire to bring buses into that part of the city. You know, I think many of us moved to Verona. In fact, I moved to Verona from Madison about 14 years ago, and it was because we wanted to live somewhere different than Madison and have a different quality of life and a different flavor and a different character, and not just be an extension of Madison, or, as I've liked to say in the past, sort of a light beer version of Madison. And I think bringing Madison's mass transit into Verona and into this neighborhood is essentially just making this part of the city an extension of Madison. And I can tell you that is not what the people in that part of the city want, nor do I think it's a good idea. So I think we should, in both the mass transit section, and I know there were a couple of bullet points on transit in the key neighborhood recommendations of the plan, I'd like to just see that eliminated. And I think we don't need to speak to mass transit in this plan. If for some reason the people of the city of Verona decide that they really want Madison Metro bus service into the city, they can have that discussion at the city council level, and they can negotiate something with Madison Metro, but I certainly don't think we need to put it in a neighborhood plan. Just a couple of other points that are related to land use. I think we should be careful about putting lot size square footages in the neighborhood plan. I know that the plan speaks to a variety of different lot sizes, and I think that's a good thing. But it does appear to restrict larger lots to, and by larger I mean larger than 10,000 square feet, to wooded residential. And there's only 2 wooded residential areas identified in the entire planning area, and one of them is already developed. So it's kind of like, well, that doesn't count because there's already development there. And so I just wonder why we would make a neighborhood plan where we said, well, we want to try and keep larger lot sizes to a minimum and only located in this one area. I think we should let the market decide what lot sizes are appropriate, and if that's a 6,000 square foot lot, which I hope it isn't, but if it is, then that's what the market demands, and if it's something bigger than that, then great. But I don't think we need to get that specific in the plan. So I appreciate the plan. I think on balance it's a very thoughtful, well put together plan. But I think that we can make it even better with a few changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. Other questions, comments? Mr. Lytle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Procedurally, process-wise, I guess I would like a little information on, we discussed that the City of Madison Plan Commission reviewed this, recommended it for approval to the Madison Council with suggestions but no required revisions, at least is the way you explained it. Suppose a different version of this neighborhood plan is approved in Verona from what's approved in Madison. Is there a harmonization step going on in addition to, as more information is gained between now and the urban service area application, if we change a number from a 3 to a 6, do we have to go back to the city of Madison while that boundary agreement's in place?
Mr. Sayre?
You know, I don't think so. I don't think as long as it's not a significant change of any substance. I think if you took the buffer out, for example, I think that's a change they would probably red flag right away. But I think if you tweaked, you know, I think some of the comments that Commissioner Manley made, I think a lot of those comments regarding, you know, mass transit or land use and that nature, I don't foresee them, you know, raising an issue of what's got to go back through because of that. So I don't think those are major changes unless it's a drastic change you're proposing. But I think what Commissioner Manley was suggesting wasn't drastic by any means. But yeah, their comments weren't conditions. They were just points of discussion. It was a very free-flowing dialogue of. To be honest, they were kind of confused. There was even before them. I mean, they were more floored. The big question, the first question out of the gate was, why are we even looking at this tonight? So I don't think, as long as it's consistent with the agreement with Madison, I don't see, you know, their staff raising too many issues. You know, I think that the comments we had from their staff when they looked at it was, you know, one, putting the buffer back on, and that's why it went back on. And second, their staff requested that we adopt design standards for this neighborhood to ensure there's a high quality architectural or buildings, so it looks nice with whatever they're planning out there as well too, which I thought that was an appropriate comment. We do that already, so I think that's something we can look at. Beyond that, I don't think, as long as you don't make anything drastic, that it's not going to go back.
Thank you. If
Go
you
ahead,
don't-
Mr. Lytle.
Thank you. Just to follow up then, the sequence of events that you described in terms of approving a neighborhood plan that's consistent with the current boundary agreement, understanding that sometime over the next 18 months we would wish to renegotiate that boundary agreement with the city of Madison. It's helpful to have a neighborhood plan that's been adopted as part of our urban service area expansion application to use to refer to, even with the understanding that there may be some revisions to that if that boundary agreement is renegotiated.
Mr. Sayre?
Yeah, before we go for the CARPC for urban service area, we have to have that neighborhood plan adopted. And I mean, one of the things CARPC has in their list of boxes you have to check is community separation. I think obviously the buffer's on there right now. I think even the language in the plan and it kind of basically says it's going to change. There's a good chance it's going to change. But this is something that would have to be done before we went to CARPC to do that. We'd have to have that plan in place. So, and any plan's going to have potentially changes to it. I mean, it's the reality of what it is. I mean, this is going to change possibly even when a developer comes forward. And, you know, and it should change just with the market and whatnot as well. So yeah, this has to be done before we go to CARPC. I think that was kind of the root of your question. If not, I guess clarify it.
Great, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Getz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to take the opportunity briefly to respectfully disagree with a couple of assertions that Mr. Manley made. I, for one, like seeing a reference to mass transit in the plan. I'd prefer to have that there so it's not a surprise to anyone in the future if it's not there and all of a sudden development starts booming out there and mass transit issue comes forward at that point and people start shaking their heads or having a lot of concerns about why didn't we know about this? So I prefer to have that in there and leave it as it is. Regarding the wooded lot sizes, if we can, as a city, preserve any established wooded areas within the city, that would certainly be my preference. You know, and if it would need to be changed or modified for development coming forward, you know, take it up at that time. But I like the idea of having that designated as slightly larger lots. 12,000, you said 12,000 to
15,000.
to 15,000. I mean, some of the established older lots in the downtown area, house that I used to live at on South Franklin Street was a 12,000 square foot lot. Established trees, as opposed to just ripping everything down carte blanche and having to replant everything, certainly speaking as the Chair of Parks, Forestry, and Recreation, I'd prefer to maintain those wooded areas that are already established instead of having to start from scratch. I like trees, so I'm going to go with the side of the trees there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Getz. Mr. Horsfall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've always been the buffer person, at least on the commission. Mr. Manley talked about, coming to Verona for a reason and not being in a mini Madison. Well, one of the ways you know that is when you're driving down PD or driving down M, there's green space between Madison and Verona. Not like when you're driving down Gammon Road and you hit Madison and then you go to Middleton, and you can barely tell that you've changed municipalities. Same thing going into Fitchburg. So one of the things I like about Verona is having the buffer. I know I'm probably in the minority on that, but that's the way I feel about it. And so I like them, I know we're giving up something, but we're gaining a little bit of isolation between us and Madison and our other municipalities. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horsfall. Mr. Linder?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm gonna start with going back to Mr. Lidle's question, just being a little devil's advocate on this. So if Madison approves the plan as it's submitted and we make a change, like Mr. Lidle said, from a 3 to a 6, could there potentially be somebody saying, no, we didn't prove it from Madison, you can't do that, now the whole plan is, I worry about somebody filing a lawsuit, I guess is what I'm getting at, saying you can't do that because that's not what we approved.
Mr. Sayre?
Could it happen? Yes, it always could happen. You can always say that. I think even looking at Meriter, if you look at that example, how things have been done that haven't been consistent with the agreement. So Meriter, they have a berm that's 150 feet wide. It's got a berm, landscaping trees on it, and they have their parking lot, and then they have their building at 300 feet. Technically, that was an exception made to the agreement that we have in place with them as well. So I think based upon that, I think there's also some language regarding Cross Country Road that we haven't followed that completely to the agreement as well too. I think there's a track record of there. It's not to the letter of the law. There have been exceptions made by joint approval by both municipalities. Now, yeah, could someone raise the issue? I think they could. If I think it's I believe if it's a small and minor change, I guess I don't see that as being an issue, but it's always the what if, I guess.
Well, the Meriter one came before us and we approved it with the exceptions that you're talking about, correct? So we both approved the same
Correct.
site plan, which I think is, I'm trying to get that's a difference in what I'm talking about. We're approving one, potentially approving a different plan if something changes. If it doesn't, then it's not an issue compared to what Madison.
I guess, if there is a change, I'd probably take it to their staff and just get their staff feedback on it. If their
Okay.
staff is supportive of it and feel they can process it, which I think, if it's minor, I think they could. If you were taking it to, like, the 6 to the 3 comments of if all of a sudden you just made a change the plan, you said if you wanted to keep lot sizes in there, you said all lot sizes have to be 20,000 square feet minimum. Yeah, I think that's a pretty big change. So I guess it depends on what exactly is being changed in here. I think ultimately this is a starting point for development. I think changes are going to probably happen as development occurs, as the market changes, as everything changes out here. But I don't think we're making changes in this in a month or within a few months. I think it's going to be when we're actually looking at projects, that's when the conversations are going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Carp City won't care if we prove something different than Madison? When you go for the urban service area?
So you mean if we adopted something that wasn't consistent with
Let-
our agreement, or?
No, if we adopted, the plan was submitted, let's say Mr. Manley wants mass transit out of a sudden ours, and we pass that, it's technically different than what Madison has.
If you make minor changes tonight, what I'm basically going to do is I'll take those changes, summarize them, and send them off to Madison staff, and I'll get an answer of just what they think about them. Ultimately, it goes to their council tomorrow. If there are minor changes, I would just basically state that to them. If this is what they looked at, these are so-called minor changes that are made to it. Do you see any issue with this or not? And I think, as I said before, is what Commissioner Manley had talked about. I don't think those are any major changes.
Okay. I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep harping at it, but I just want to be clear. Couple other questions. One, so if we approve this, Do the design standards go with it, or is that kind of separate?
We'd have to, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
We'd have to
Mr.
come back and codify those. I mean, this isn't intended to be a zoning ordinance. It's not, plans are intended to be a guide. It's not intended to be a law. So, I mean, obviously, development has to be consistent with what's going on in here, but I think what we would do, we'd come back between now and when development happens, we'd create design standards for the city. This would be kind of the basis of looking at those standards. This would be kind of the groundwork, at least, of saying this is what the plan commission and ultimately the council recommended, and we'd work upon that. So we'd have to come back and create those.
Okay, and then, so related to designs, in the description it talked about future street design to encourage people to slow down. What would that incorporate?
You know, there's a variety of things you can do from a street design standpoint, and I mean that's on a case-by-case basis when the projects go forward, and having crosswalks, you know, looking at is there an appropriate place for a bump out possibly to shorten the pedestrian crossing distance, and just looking at, you know, if you have a long straight road, people tend to go faster just naturally. So I mean, just looking at the road design of putting a curve into it as well, just generally looking at roads and saying, okay, you know, if we have that large kind of east-west road going through the neighborhood, is it best to have it as a straight line, or should we be kind of moving it? Should there certain features we could put into it that naturally would cause people to kind of just slow down? Northern Lights is a good example of a road that isn't straight. It has a lot of bends and curves to it, so.
Doesn't slow everybody down, though.
No.
So my next question, also for you, Adam, got a bunch of them for you here. So the multifamily, you know, on the drawings we have, there shows the major collectors, but it doesn't show the small streets. Is there a street division plan between the multifamily and the single family? Like one side of the street compared to the other?
Yeah, there would be. The streets on the plan are just mostly they're the larger roads, and we had an initial drawing that came before you that I think the plan commission said take off the smaller roads, so we took that off. So I mean, this is kind of the larger roads that we felt are more important to kind of show on there. And I think the key on the plan itself isn't so much where these lines are falling, it's the purple dots. That's what we know we have to kind of shoot for as the point of kind of return. But there'll be roads throughout here scattered about here, you know, wherever a developer thinks it's appropriate, and the city as well too. But we took that layer off this as part of this plan.
Because I'd be looking forward to have at least a road separation between the two. You know, we had recently one that came up that was on the same lot generally, and I didn't think that was a good idea. So, the next question is, you talked about the quarry mitigation plan. Do you know what that is for the area east of Nine Mound Road?
Every non-metallic mining pit in the state has to have a reclamation plan in place, so they obviously have a reclamation plan. Off the top of my head, I don't recall exactly what it is, but obviously at some point, it's when the pit's empty, it'd be reclaimed to some fashion of, you know, open space usually, or depending on what's in the actual plan, a lake. Yeah, it depends on what's in there. So every non-metallic mine in the state of Wisconsin by statute has to have that in place.
Okay, because one of the reasons I ask is it's got a road going through it, so that would depend on what's going to happen with the quarry.
We'd have to acquire land to do that. We'd have to acquire the right of way in order to construct that road. I think the key for us was having it in place as showing that we wanted a connection kind of going through there. We have cross country to the south, PD to the north, and we felt it was important to kind of have this middle road instead of forcing people north and south, at least having that in place so as projects go forward, we have a starting point at least saying we want to make this connection. I know with the design of Nine Mound Road, we have a spot on the actual plan where this intersection could go or where this connection could be made. And that's kind of the point as well, too. When we look at long-term transportation planning, we can point to this and say, yeah, we've been planning for this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Where would the water get pumped to in the basin?
Right now, the plan is, and Bob can correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd have the water collecting here. There'd be a pipe that would run up Raymond Road. So it'd be pumped to the east up Raymond Road, and there's a large, I think, facility, I want to say right here. It would flow into that facility and ultimately kind of get into the Madison stormwater system and drain out. So it would be pumped up Raymond Road, and that would be constructed as part of the County Highway M project. You'd have that pipe buried as part of that project.
Are they planning on doing that?
The
right
current plan is to do that.
Okay. All right. I guess the last thing I got is just to comment on one of Mr. Manley's things. So my understanding, you're looking for more of a blank palette as opposed for housing, as opposed to define. I think I kind of agree with that, you know, not pigeonhole us into something right now. I know you got two different ones, two different colors there, but I'd kind of more like a blank palette for myself. I mean, they can still be smaller lots with trees in them. They just
Mr. Sayre?
give us options.
Yeah, the intent in the plan, I mean, it was mostly just to provide an estimate of the unit count. I mean, and the language in there is may. I mean, it's not, it shall be, it's may. So it's one of those, it would be looked at. I mean, I think we could change the language to say, for example, I think that what we're trying to do is when we go towards CARPC is have a number in mind of accounts so we can make sure we can tell them with certainty, or not with certainty, but just with, this is what we're estimating on saying what we think we're going to have in the neighborhood. I mean, I'm comfortable either, you know, I prefer to just kind of water it down some more, but we can take it out if it's creating issues. But it was intended to be more than just a estimate. Like I said, this is a guide. It's not intended to regulate the actual lot size. That should be done by the zoning ordinance.
Go ahead, Mr. Linder.
One last with the mass transit. I don't have people telling me they want more buses through the area, but I do understand Mr. Getz's, to leave the option open. I believe the plan said mainly on PD. Is that correct? Or excuse me, M. The buses on M. I'm not sure about. Was there one through the actual neighborhood itself?
Yeah, the only thought in buses, and the reason I know we talked about this in October, and the reason it wasn't taken out, it was I didn't have direction, and to be honest, there wasn't consensus from the plan commission. I didn't know what to do with it, to be honest, so I left it in. So, and if you want to take it out, that's fine as well, or keep it in too. The reason we put that in was, I would suspect at some point, there'll be probably a bus line coming from the north running to Epic as well. So I mean, obviously that's going to be running along. I would suspect County Highway PD. I just would suspect by their growth and their demands from their employees that they're going to be looking for something out there. I guess the thought I had was, if it came down, instead of just taking it through PD, you could pick up this, I don't know, you could potentially run it down PD, down to M, kind of cut through this commercial area, and then come back north here, or through here and make a left turn and come back out. That was my intention of basically the thought was putting it on the larger roads. Obviously, that would be up to the council to decide that if we want to do that or not as well too, as part of when the routes come out. But that was the thought behind it. It wasn't an intention to definitely put it through residential neighborhoods. It was mostly looking at that east-west collector in that commercial area and seeing if there was an appropriate location in there for the bus itself. But whatever the plan commission wants to do with that, I'm fine with that. But that was the reasoning behind it, and that was the reason why it didn't come out, just because I didn't have a clear recommendation from this body.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure that I'm clear with respect to the lot sizes, and the example that I gave with the wooded residential wasn't intended to say I was opposed to the wooded residential. My point was that's the only classification where a lot size larger than 10,000 square feet was contemplated. And my point is, there might be other areas within the planning area aside from that little brown polygon to the north of the Kettle Woods neighborhood, where somebody might want a 12,000 square foot home or a 15,000 square foot home. And I don't think we should have a plan that at least gives the appearance that we're going to try and buttonhole all the larger lots in exclusively into that one small portion of the planning area. I can assure you that I don't have anything against trees.
Additional questions, comments? Mr. Lytle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of items more specific to the plan. We talked about the need to pump out stormwater. Is significant sanitary sewer infrastructure needed, Mr. Gunlock, in terms of lift stations and that kind of thing to service this area?
The Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District will be bringing an interceptor to the 5 Points intersection. At that point, we will pick that up. I believe from some preliminary studies I've done that you will not need any lift stations in this area to serve it.
Okay.
Again, it depends upon how a developer grades his property at times, but I believe the interceptor will be deep enough that we can get everything by gravity.
Thank you. And then
Go ahead,
just
Mr.
to
Lytle.
continue, I understand, Mr. Horsfall, where you're coming from in terms of a buffer. I think what we're cursed or blessed with is that there's, for any foreseeable future, there's going to be significant buffer to the northeast of PD&M, northwest of PD&M, significant buffer to the southeast of PD&M, and other than a small sliver, maybe directly north of the intersection of PD&M, decent buffer in the northeast corner. So I think maintaining a separation is going to be pretty likely, even without any sort of buffer to the southwest. And to me, that seems like overkill, especially if that's really the only corner of that intersection that has the potential for commercial development. And so I would continue to recommend looking at easing at least the size or magnitude of that buffer. Finally, I think I agree with Mr. Getz in terms of bus and mass transit. I don't envision Verona ever becoming a place where there's bus stops every 3 blocks. At the same time, I've seen many examples of buses actually encouraging economic development in our city, allowing folks to get to some of those businesses, especially near the main roads. And for that reason, I think it's fine to leave the transit language as it is in the current neighborhood plan. I think the number of bus stops or how integrated it is into the system in the north neighborhood is something we should discuss and be thoughtful about, but potentially creating bad blood with the city or with CARPC by striking that from the plan, I don't think has enough benefit to us to make it worth our while. So I understand why there's some hesitation from some folks in terms of mass transit and keeping Verona out of that system, but I think we'd be kidding ourselves to not continue to look at opportunities to use mass transit effectively for portions of our city. And then I would just feel more comfortable finally if you could summarize for me the fees and how they would or wouldn't be assessed. I know there's no hard and fast rule for that, but just as a general approach that we would take for existing landowners.
Mr. Sayre?
So CARPC for this year, and I think it started late last year, adopted a fee policy where when you submit a urban service application, you now have to pay a fee, and it's based upon acreage. And then if you go on their website, you can actually plug in your acreage and calculate how much you're going to owe. So basically, unlike in the past where we could submit these urban or service area applications, there wouldn't be a fee. Now we have to pay half that fee up front at the time of application. The other half is paid when the people connect to the property itself. So I raised this, when Bill White and I were talking today, I raised the comment of that's something we have to talk about still. And to be honest, as a staff, we really haven't fleshed out what we're going to do with that. We have set aside money in the planning department budget to cover those fees. I think it's probably one of those most property owners probably don't want to pay it right now. And what we'll probably do is just hold those fees over for, as part of a pre-annexation agreement, and when they annex the city, we'll collect those fees at that time. But we don't really have any details. All we know is that when we submit, we're going to have to pay a fee, and if there isn't a development or user on the back end of that, and it's going to be difficult for us to. Well, we can't require the property owner to pay it, but obviously it's probably in the city's best interest to pay it, move forward, and carry it over and pick up the reimbursed. I guess be reimbursed when development happens out there. So, but I like I said, we haven't talked internally as staff enough, and at a council level, if we get some clarification how they want us to proceed. But I think initially, staff, that's how we do it.
Can you, from an order of magnitude standpoint, give us an idea what the fees for the north neighborhood would be for the application?
Well, it depends on acreage. I think the amount that we budgeted in the planning department budget was $16,000, about $16,000, so that would cover half the fee. And I think that was based upon approximately 400 acres. And I'm not saying we're going to add that. That was just the estimate we had in the budget. I think it was based upon 400 acres. So that comes out to a total fee of $32,000, of which half we pay now, half is paid at time of connection.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions, comments? Just a couple comments here. I share the concern regarding the mass transit. I think the option that people have right now to use the current routes appears to be working pretty well. And I just want to throw something out here to see if there'd be support in the Plan Commission to do this. So to not entirely delete the section on mass transit, but I'm going to ask you to go 2 places on the plan. One on page 25, which is the key neighborhood recommendations. I don't know, Adam, if you want to pull that up on the screen, or you can't. Okay, that's fine. Is everyone on the Plan Commission there? I'm thinking out loud here, I'm wondering if this would perhaps be acceptable and maybe some middle ground here. If we would delete the last 2 bullet points on page 25, and then if you can go to page 8, the section on transportation and then mass transit. Also delete the last 2 sentences of that paragraph regarding mass transit. So delete, the city supports bus service within the north neighborhood as part of the larger regional bus system. A potential bus stop is planned within the central portion of the neighborhood. Delete those 2 sentences, but leave the remainder of that paragraph in regarding mass transit. I throw that out there as an option. Mr. Linder?
I like that idea a lot. I'd be supportive of that.
Mr. Getz?
I would also be supportive of that.
Other questions or comments on that? I mean, we don't have an amendment to it right now, but if there's support to do that when we're looking for motions. Mr. Manley?
Turn it on. I think that's a nice balance between having nothing at all and having the kind of the fair warning that Mr. Getz talked about in the event that the city does decide to move forward with an agreement with Madison Metro for this part of the city in the future.
Okay, well, we are in the stage of questions, comments, or potential actions, potential motions. Mr. Manley?
I'll move to make an amendment to the plan consistent with the changes you recommended on page, I believe it was 25.
And 8.
And page 8.
We have a motion by Mr. Manley. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Getz. We have discussion now specifically on the amendment. Mr. Lytle?
I'm fine either way. I just don't know do we want to be amending a plan that we're not currently considering under a formal motion? Just however you're comfortable.
You're correct. We should have a motion to recommend the plan before we have a motion to amend. So I'm sorry about that. Thank you for that, Patrick. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution and recommend the North Neighborhood Plan?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have that motion by Mr. Lytle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Manley. Now, Mr. Manley, if you would.
I'll move to amend the plan to make the changes related to mass transit that you had suggested
All
for
right.
pages 8 and page 25.
Okay, and Mr. Getz, yeah, that's acceptable. Okay, so now we have discussion on the amendment. Mr. Horsfall?
Yeah, I guess my question is, what is wrong with the sentence, "The city supports bus service within the north neighborhood as part of the large regional bus system"? I'm a little confused about that general statement. If in the future, there is some need for some bus service in the north neighborhood area, have we eliminated that because we've taken that out of the plan?
I think that my concern is, and what I've heard from people, there's a lot of people that are just opposed to the mass transit entirely. But the people that do support it, at least the ones that I've talked to, are the people that support it currently now on East and West Verona Avenue, but they do not want to see the buses going in the neighborhoods. And that's why I suggested taking it out, because it says within the north neighborhood, and some people could see that as within the actual subdivision.
Right, I guess when I interpret that as not subdivisions, but as Adam had pointed out, into the area that has, maybe some shops and stuff like that, that would produce, a destination spot for people who are taking mass transit, that the north neighborhood is a large area that isn't all residential.
Mhm.
And I think that's what they're getting at with the mass transit, I don't think anybody wants it to go into a neighborhood and pick up people. Like, Patrick said, every, 3 blocks. It's more the, trying to service, a mixed-use property or something. And then connecting into, maybe there's housing development or mixed use that's gonna get people from there to Epic, and rather than driving, they can use the mass transit. That seems like a logical approach.
Well,
So
I think-
anyways, that's my.
I'm thinking as Mr. Sayre previously indicated, that this would allow us some flexibility. If the city decided that they did want to do that in the future, we'd be able to do that. That's just my thought. Mr. Getz?
I think in that section there, the sentence right before the 2 sentences to be proposed as deleted certainly is generalized statement enough that allows the city to support or not support that effort as the development does arise out there. Thought it was on.
Mr. Lytle?
I'm not sure that either version really captures my preference, and I think what we should weigh is the upside of not getting this into an approved plan versus the downside of Adam passing along the red line changes that we've made to the Madison City Council. And the red line changes they see that jump out at them are us pushing down mass transit. So again, I think this is a decision or a strategy Verona needs to take for mass transit and reflect the preferences of the citizens. But I just am not sure that now that the genie's out of the bottle and they've seen this once already, not that any of them have read it, but what they will see, I would guess, is the red line changes that Adam at least indicated he was planning to send along. So that being said, I'm completely fine with the changes. I'm just not sure the downside outweighs the upside.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on the amendment? Mr. Manley?
I don't think that that's a frivolous concern, Mr. Lytle. But this is a recommendation to the council, and I don't know that we have an obligation to share language with the city of Madison until such time as our council would actually enact the plan. And as it relates to CARPC, I know that since their role is to review for water quality, mass transit would not factor into their calculus, and they would limit the scope of their review to only those water quality and stormwater infiltration issues.
Additional questions or comments on the amendment? If not, I'll call the question. All those in support of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
The amendment passes. We have one no vote. We are on the main motion now, as amended. Additional questions on the main motion? Seeing no questions, all those in favor of the motion as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
And that motion carries. And this will be on the council agenda then, on the next council agenda. Just give me time to get caught up here. Okay, we are on agenda item number 8, which is discussion and possible action regarding a certified survey map to modify the lot lines of 2 lots located at the northeast corner of Locust and Meadowside Drive. Mr. Sayre, if you would provide the background, please.
Thank you. This is a request that involves Lot 1, which is owned by the Tirishiros, and I may have mispronounced your name, but I apologize. And Outlot 1 on the CSM, which is owned by the city. Outlot 1 is actually an existing stormwater facility that the city owns and has maintained since it was constructed in 1999, 2000, approximately in there. The property owner to the north approached the city some time ago, actually before I began here, and had some concerns about where the lot lines were lining up on the property. So they actually went out, completed a survey, and what we found out was that the city's stormwater pond was inadvertently constructed partially on their property, and the fence line, or the fence they had on their property was on our property. So we had some lot line concerns, and when we met with the property owners, they offered to kind of basically, let's all clean this up together. Obviously, they're looking out towards the future at some point. They may be selling the lot, and they wanted to have these kind of issues resolved at this time. So in a nutshell, what the CSM is doing, it's creating a new lot, Lot 1 of the CSM, and a new outlot of the CSM that would put the stormwater facilities where they should have been, all on one lot initially, and then also put the Tirishiros property on Lot 1 where it should have been initially as well, too. Staff has no concerns with this. We actually appreciate them coming forward and doing this. It cleans up an issue for us as well, so I would thank them for that. We did take this to our Public Works Committee on January 26th, and they discussed it, and they had no concerns with it. And staff has no concerns with the CSM. So with that, staff recommends the Planning Commission recommend to the Common Council that the certified survey map modifying the lot lines of 2 lots located located at the northeast corner of Locust and Meadowside Drive. And I will say the applicants are here tonight. If you have any questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer anything you have.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. You have heard the background. Again, this would be if we were to take action, would be a recommendation to the Common Council. Questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. Horsfall?
Yeah, question for Bob. When Locust gets widened, does the right-of-way get widened even farther as part of that project?
Mr.
You know what I'm
Gunlock?
getting at? Or will they be able to fit the new road on the existing dedicated public?
Locust Drive is not being widened. The bridge is being widened, but Locust Drive was widened
Oh, okay, so that's.
back the time that Prairie Crest came in, so there'd be no improvements whatsoever to Locust Drive.
Mr. Horsfall?
This time I'd like to recommend to the Common Council approve the certified survey map modifying the lot lines of 2 lots located at the northeast corner of Locust and Meadowside Drive.
We have a motion by Mr. Horsfall. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Linder. We are open for discussion on the motion. Questions, comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. First of all, thank you for your patience. Secondly, it will be on the Common Council agenda for the next meeting. Next, agenda item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding extraterritorial certified survey map to modify the lot lines for property located at the southwest corner of Sunset Drive and County Highway PB in the town of Verona. Mr. Sayre, if you'd provide the background, please.
Thank you. This is a request for a certified survey map that's located in the town of Verona. The Pro CSM would modify the lot lines of 3 existing parcels and pretty much just shift those around to kind of create some conforming lots. Currently, the lot lines, I believe, cut through some buildings, and this would basically clean up what's out there right now. The city does have an ordinance regarding ETJ land divisions. In general, they're limited to a minimum lot size of 35 acres, but there are exceptions to that, and this is one of those exceptions where that if they're creating a land division that does not create any additional building sites, this land division would not create any additional building sites. It would just merely shift around the 3 lots that are out there right now. Staff has no concerns with it. The only comment that we have is that we're requesting additional right-of-way dedication along Lot 3 of the CSM of Sunset Drive. This would match up the rest of Sunset Drive with what should be out there right now and make it 66 feet wide. I have spoken with the applicant, the surveyor, and the town administrator. All 3 of those people have no concerns with that at all, so they thought it was a reasonable condition. So that staff recommends the Plan Commission recommend the Common Council approve the ETJ certified survey map for parcels located at the southwest corner of County Highway PB and Sunset Drive in the town of Verona, with the following condition: that the CSM shall dedicate additional Sunset Drive right-of-way along Lot 3 to the public to match the existing right-of-way dedication of the adjacent lots.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. With that, you've heard the background. Questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. Manley?
I move approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Manley, and I'm assuming with the
With the
condition-
conditions,
with the
right.
contingency. We have a motion by Mr. Manley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lytle. Questions or comments on the motion? Again, this is a recommendation to the Common Council. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. This will also be on the next council agenda, and thank you for your patience. Agenda item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding site plan review for proposed building additions that would add approximately 25,500 square feet to the coating place located at 200 Paoli Street. Mr. Sayre, if you would, please.
Okay, thank you. So the request tonight is for a site plan approval to construct a building addition at the coating place. There are 2 phases to this addition. The applicant has labeled those as Phase 4 and Phase 5. They're actually all tied together, so without one they can't have the other, basically. The first addition, which is Phase 4, would add, it would add a new roof over the existing building, a 2-story addition in the existing courtyard, and that would be in this area approximately, and a corridor connecting the buildings together. The big part of this addition would be the new roof kind of over the building itself. It would help free up some issues. The second part of the addition would result in the addition of an office space on the south end of the building. That area would be approximately 22,000 square feet. Each floor would have 11,000 square feet of space. Tentatively, the applicant's planning on starting the Phase 4 additions in 2015, and they would begin the Phase 5, or the second phase, in 2016. Staff has reviewed this from a bulk standpoint and finds that it meets all the all the setback requirements and the building height requirements. Parking, there is sufficient parking on the property to accommodate the proposed additions. One thing to point out is that during the Phase 5 addition, there will be some modifications made to the parking lot, and what that entails is currently these 2 parking lots are connected. That connection would go away, and as part of that, the 2 existing driveway openings kind of on the northern end and the middle here, those would be closed, and there'd be one access point from Paoli Street in the middle of the property here, and the southern parking lot would remain the existing staff parking lot. So there would be some minor modifications to that. Staff has had a chance to take a look at that, and we don't have any concerns with it. Landscaping, there was a conceptual landscaping plan submitted with the project. It does meet the proposed landscaping point requirements. Staff has no concerns with that. No additional impervious surface is being added as part of this project, so there is no stormwater requirement for this. The building addition itself, it would match the existing building on the property. The colors would be very similar as well too. They're proposing to use stone veneer, ephes, and metal. Staff has no concerns with it. Like I said, it's matching what's out there, and it's consistent with the existing building. One thing I do want to point out is that portions of the office addition, that's on the southern end of the site, in Phase 5, it's actually located within the floodplain. The applicant and staff have kind of talked about this. There are some discrepancies on the DNR maps right now that need to be adjusted by the city here at some point. So in order to kind of either, I guess the bottom line is the applicant either needed to flood-proof the building or make sure the first floor elevation was at a certain level, and they've done that. It needs to be at an elevation of 944.9. The proposed office addition will be at an elevation 945.4, so it's approximately half a foot above where where it needs to be from a floodplain standpoint. We don't have any concerns with that. I just want to make a note that if you do decide to approve it tonight, making sure that's a condition of approval, that it's at least at 944.9. The applicant has requested to waive the initial review to kind of make sure they keep the project moving. It is kind of time sensitive to pull together the construction drawings. Staff has no concerns with this. This is an existing business. The proposed building modifications and additions matches what's out there right now. We think it's a good looking project and we don't have any concerns with it. So staff recommends the Plan Commission waive the initial review and approve the site plans for the coating place located at 200 Paoli Street with the following condition: that the first floor elevation of the addition shall be constructed at a minimum elevation of 944.9, or the addition shall be flood-proofed. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know the applicant's here and is more than happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. Mr. Manley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Adam, you had mentioned some discrepancies with respect to the floodplain maps with the DNR, and is FEMA the other party to that discrepancy, or where does that, where's the sort of the
Mr.
points
Gunlock?
of friction there?
Well, it's FEMA and the DNR. You have two streams. You have the Badger Mill Creek and you have the dry tributary to Badger Mill, and they come together in this area. And what happened when back in 2008 or whatever, they did cross sections through the whole area. Well, when they did the mapping, they did not tie the cross sections together. So the dry tributary controls and basically has an elevation of 944.5 or 0.9. And the Badger Mill Creek is a little lower than that, but Paoli Street is not high and is lower. So when the dry trib floods, it can overflow Paoli Street and flood out the area to the south, and the maps are just the opposite. They show the floodplain as being the elevation for the Badger Mill. It just needs to be cleaned up the next time FEMA does a map revision for the area, which will be in probably a few years. The area has to be modified so that the cross sections agree.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
So if
Ron.
I could just follow
Go
up
ahead,
on
Mr.
that.
Manley.
If we approve the contingency that Adam suggested, which I assume has been communicated to the applicant, and that's acceptable, does that make everything, as far as FEMA or DNR floodplain regulation would, or our local floodplain ordinances, everything would be copacetic?
Well, we're going by the higher elevation, which is controlled by the dry tributary, and the dry tributary is closer to the coating place in the Badger Mill Creek. So we're going by the flood elevation that it should be.
Okay.
Okay, if you look at the maps show a different elevation, a little lower elevation, but we're going by what it should be based on looking at the model for the dry tributary that was done when the flood maps were prepared. They did two models, but when they brought the two models together, the cross sections, the floodplains overlap, and they did not correct they did not compensate one of the two models for that. And talking to my floodplain expert, he indicates that this happens quite frequently, that the models can't be combined. You have to run one model and run the other model, and then you kind of have to look at it and say, well, this is what the elevation should be. Well, they didn't do that. And it has to be cleaned up in the future. But right now, the 100-year flood elevation is 944.9, and if their building is at is above that, well, it's, the actual flood elevation is at 942.9, and they have to be 2 feet above that because they're in the flood fringe. So as long as they're at 944.9 or above, they're okay. They
Okay.
meet our ordinance of being 2 feet above and flood-proof.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Mr. Horsfall?
Actually, how tall is the building?
Mr. Sarah?
The addition would be 35 feet tall.
So that fits right where our restriction is?
The code is 45 feet for the UI.
45 for
Yeah,
this.
for the UI district.
Great.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Linder?
I do have one question. Is this going to result in additional employees down the road? I had to get you out of your seat.
I'm Terry Breining. I'm the engineering manager at Coating Place. It will not result in additional coating, but additional testing. The first phase, we're going to be expanding our chemistry lab, basically doubling the amount of chemistry lab space we have. So right now, we outsource some of our testing work that's done, and that will all be brought in-house then. So approximately 45, 50 more chemists will work there then.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Linder?
I'll make a motion.
This is a plan commission action item.
Okay. Make a motion to waive the initial review and approve the site plan for the Coating Place located at 200 Paoli Street with the following condition: the first floor elevation of the addition shall be constructed at a minimum elevation of 944.9 feet, or the addition shall be flood-proofed.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Manley. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval with the contingency signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Next, we have agenda item number 11, which is discussion and possible action regarding initial site plan review and conditional use permit review for a proposed 8,181 square foot daycare center to be located on Lot 1 of the Prairie Oak subdivision. We are not taking any action this evening. It is just initial site plan review. Mr. Sayre, if you would, please.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting review of a proposed daycare center which will be located at in Prairie Oaks. Excuse me. We located within the on Prairie Oaks Drive, mainly north of the Citgo gas station. So this is the same property that has that lighthouse feature, I guess you want to call it. That'd be at the kind of the southwest corner of the lot. Proposing to have a daycare center that would be for children from ages birth to 5 years old. The applicant is hoping to start construction here in 2015 and be open for the 25th school year starts. From a bulk standpoint, it does meet all the setbacks, so staff has no concerns with that. The actual site itself, you'd have the access coming in. They're proposing 47 parking spaces. And taking and looking at the parking counts on the property based upon a maximum of 132 students and a maximum of 22 employees in the largest shift, 48 stalls would be required by ordinance. Staff has advised the applicant to kind of up that number. Other thing looking at the site is the building will be located in the middle here. On the south side, you will have an outdoor play area, and you'll also have an outdoor play area on the north side as well, too. Staff has no concerns with that. We think it's appropriate, and I'm just adjusting my screen so I can read this. One of the things I want to point out from a drainage and stormwater standpoint is that obviously the applicant needs on-site retention as part of this project. There's an existing pipe that kind of dumps onto this property and then sheet flows across the entire property. As part of this project, the applicant's going to be picking up that pipe, and they're going to be looking at a variety of options. One idea was to possibly pipe it along the north property line out to the storm sewer in the street here. Another option was to take a look at the ditching, possibly ditching that water and connecting it out to the Prairie Oaks Drive there as well too. They're still working through the details of that, but that's one thing they're looking at. That's going to be a benefit for kind of everyone involved here. It will take care of the existing condition on that property where the water just dumps across the lot. Staff has no concerns with that. We prefer to see the water piped versus ditched just from a maintenance standpoint. But we're open to kind of having the conversation with the applicants on that. Architecturally, the applicant did submit some prototype examples that have been built elsewhere. This one is from Pleasant Prairie, which is down closer to Racine. There's also another daycare center like this in Brookfield as well too. The buildings use brick, obviously some stone, some high quality materials. One of the items staff has kind of encouraged the applicant to take a look at is just taking a look at the building colors. We don't have any concerns with the materials, but trying to define a color of the brick and of the paint itself, and try to blend with the existing development that's south of there. It's in that prairie type design, which in general is more earth tones and I guess duller in color, if you want to call that. But just try and look at the color palette and just see if there's a better way to blend with it. I think the red brick is okay. I'd prefer to see the color blend a little better with what's out there right now. So I've encouraged the applicant to at least take a look at that and review what's in the area and try to blend it with the surrounding development. So that staff recommends the Planning Commission review the submitted materials and provide feedback to the applicant. This will require a future conditional use permit and site plan approval. I know the applicant is here tonight, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. Questions, comments, or if the applicant has anything they want to add at this point?
Hello, Mr. Mayor and members of the Planning Commission. Thank you very much. My name is Andrew Brown. I am the applicant, Brownstone Properties, 635 Trade Center, Chesterfield, Missouri. I think Adam did a great job. I just wanted to let you know that we have the civil engineer, the landscape planner, a representative from Goddard School, and everyone basically, and the franchisee operator of the school present tonight to answer any questions that you may have. So I'll just go ahead and field questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments from Planning Commission members? Mr. Linder?
My first question is maybe to Mr. Gunlock. The cross street and the driveway don't match up. Do you have any issues with that as far as traffic goes?
Mr. Gunlock?
It would be nice if they matched, but again, you'll have traffic in and out of the school. There's not that much traffic on North Edge Trail. There's some, but it's not a high traffic area. It just isn't. I mean, there are a lot of apartments in the area, but whenever I come out here and drive down one of these streets, there's very little traffic on them. So I don't see it as an issue.
Mr. Getz? Thanks, Bob.
Looking at the map, is that actually a cross street, or is that the exit and entryway into the Citgo, north side of the Citgo lot?
Mr. Gunlock?
That's the private North Edge Trail. It's a private street.
Mr. Manley?
I want to make sure that I understand the stormwater. So we see a detention pond there on the site plan, but there would also be either piped or ditched stormwater management in addition, or would that be in place of the pond that's shown?
Mr. Gunlock?
There is a cross culvert that comes across County Trunk Highway M North Main Street from the west side, the Gateway subdivision, that drains a small detention basin for Gateway. It comes across and it sheet flowed across this property and drained out into the curb and gutter. this parcel would block that sheet flow, so they either need to pipe it or to take it by an open ditch around and get it over here to where the storm sewer, there's a storm sewer stubbed in here on the east side of their building. When Prairie Oaks Drive was constructed, there was a storm sewer stubbed into those lots for future to pick up this drainage, this cross drainage, and to serve these other lots. The peak flow, the stormwater that runs off of this property, it all eventually ends up in the regional basin, the Prairie Oaks Regional Basin over by the Red Soccer Park. This small stormwater basin here is just for thermal control, oil and grease, and infiltration. The peak flow, that's treated in this small basin, and the peak flow TSS removal is taken care of in the regional basin for this parcel.
Thanks, Bob. Mr. Manley?
Thank you for that. And then I just wanted to give the applicant a little bit of feedback on the building. It looks to be a little bit more consistent with a kind of a colonial look as opposed to the prairie style that's out there. But I think it's a nice looking building, and I can kind of see Adam's point, from looking at the color palette, but on the other hand, it's kind of unique, and I don't know. I guess I could go either way. I just wonder what a colonial building would look like with more earth tone. It might not. It might. I don't know. We might have wished that it stayed red brick, but anyway, I think overall the architecture is a nice looking style and would be a nice building in that part of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. Other questions, comments, feedback for the applicant? Mr. Lytle?
I guess I'll ask the question now because I know others will ask at some point along the way. I think you talked about 132 students. I would imagine that drop-off and pickup times would coincide somewhat with the busy time on North Main Street, Highway M. So I think there probably are some questions around the additional traffic volume at a particularly busy time. Mr. Gunluck, there's no plans from a city standpoint to signalize Prairie Oaks and Highway M. It's close enough to cross-country.
Mr. Gunlock?
Yeah, it's close enough to cross-country, and I'm not sure, I guess it's 2016 now. County Trunk Highway M is going to all 4 lanes. That'll be all the way from Cross Country Road all the way north will be 4 lanes. It narrows down right there now and goes to the 2 lanes, but that'll all be 4 lanes. It will still be a stop controlled, but they do have, again, there's a number of ways into this. They can come up Enterprise Drive to Prairie Oaks Drive, they can come up North Main Street, or if they are on Cross Country, or if they're on Cross Country Road, they can actually come up the private street of North Edge Trail to get to this proposed building.
Yeah, I think the parents, after dropping off their kids, any that would be trying to turn left or go south on M, I think I've seen problems there with inbound traffic southbound on Highway M. It's that transition point from the rural portion, which is now 35, I guess, posted to the city portion. I always feel sorry for the crossing guard that stands there because from the south, people are still thinking school zone, but people coming from the north aren't necessarily thinking school zone as much. I guess with the division, that sort of breaks up any crossings that would happen there. But I think everyone seems to be concerned about North Main and traffic, especially around school time, and this will, of course, add some counts to that.
Go ahead.
One of one of the things to remember about daycare hours, unlike a regular school, a preschool that has a rigid start time, the drop-off times span over like a 2-hour period, and same way with the pickup times. So if you looked at a traffic study for one of the schools, you would see that the impact is pretty minimal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manley?
I think that's a good point, although I do wonder, when this is expanded, when Highway M is widened, if this intersection, if the school district will continue to use this intersection as a crosswalk for all of the Harmony Hills children who are in the Country View Elementary attendance area, to get across Highway M, and if so, I could see the potential for some school pedestrian versus car traffic conflict there, but maybe I don't know, maybe the school's not planning on keeping that as a crosswalk. Do we know?
Don't know. Mr. Gunlock?
If they do keep it as a crosswalk, I would suggest that they have 2 crossing guards just like they do down at Llanos. They have 2 people down there for crossing guards, and they stop the traffic, and they get the kids across. I mean, there are quite a few children that cross at Llanos, and they have 2 crossing guards there. They have one for the east side of the street and one for the west side.
Other questions, comments, additional feedback? Not seeing any, so we look forward to you continue working with staff, and we'll see more information in the future, I'm sure.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. We are on agenda item number 12. Mr. Sayer, any announcements?
Just a couple things here. I guess first is looking at the April Plan Commission meeting. Trying to move that to April 8th, and it's also the week of spring break for the school district. So I guess if I've heard back from a couple of you, I've got 2 no's already. But if I can get a count to anyone else who hasn't gotten back to me, just if that works for you or not, I'd appreciate that. Jack, it's a Wednesday, the 8th, yeah. Okay.
Should work for me.
Okay. Okay, so we'll probably plan on doing the 8th, just for that. I guess for me personally, coming up, just so you know, my wife is pregnant and expecting it into April, so there might be some delays, and just kind of as we go through the May Plan Commission bill will be helping out with this, and I don't know when that's all going to happen, so it's our 3rd kid, so it's nothing new, but just as we get closer to that, there may be some delays and shuffling depending on what happens with that, and Bill will be helping out with that too, so I just wanted to make you aware if you're looking for me, and normally I know I don't communicate on a regular basis, but if you need me, it may be in and out, so just I guess give you the heads up that it could get a little choppy there for a month or 2. But Bill and I will be working on that, and we'll figure it out somehow, so, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Adam. We have nothing else on the agenda other than adjournment, so I would accept the motion to adjourn. We have a motion by Mr. Horsfall. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lytle. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.